and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Well, describing an aggressive China as the most serious competitor to the US, President Joe Biden has said that his administration will take on the challenges posed by Beijing directly, but will not hesitate to work with it when it is in America's interest to do so. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze Biden's policy on China and what it means for India and the other allies. Joining me on the program today are Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, and Sreeram Chaulia, Foreign Affairs Analyst. Thank you to my panelists for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. As far as the appointments that have been made thus far, are there any indication as to what the US's plans are as far as China is concerned and the region as a whole is concerned, be it the Secretary of State or the Defense Secretary?
Yeah, Frank, I think President Biden has actually hit the ground running. I mean, in fact, I was expecting to be softer in his opening comments about China. I know it's just a new administration. Typically, US governments, when they come in, they often think in terms of moderating and looking for resets with their major systemic rivals or competitors. But in this case, I think the scale of the competition and the rivalry with China has reached such a level, I think, especially in the last 1.5 years. So it's almost like a segue from Trump to Biden. I mean, the tone is slightly more moderate. But otherwise, I think the crux of the policy seems to be quite hardline. So that's welcome news, I think, for many of us in the region who are worried about Chinese hegemony. Biden mentioned, and in terms of appointments also, Frank, you see Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the new ambassador to the UN. It's not only economic rivalry over trade and China stealing American intellectual property or jobs or technology or even geopolitical rivalry. A lot of the Democratic base wants to shine a light on the human rights situation in mainland China and in the territories that it controls. But Biden and his team are going to really, I think, highlight more and more of the extreme totalitarian and authoritarian values that China represents. So I think in that sense, the liberals, unlike the Trump administration, are going to highlight more of this democracy or the lack of democracy and freedom in China as a big issue and try to rally the allies and partners around that point. In fact, Biden mentioned we will take on directly China's challenge to prosperity, security, and values. You see, so the values part also, I think, it's going to really, really anger the Chinese, and you're going to see a lot of bitter recriminations and back and forth between their spokespersons and the Americans going forward. And I think even in the developing world, there is going to be a struggle between the two value systems more and more. State-guided capitalism and totalitarianism of China and the free market capitalism or the moderate capitalism of the US. You're going to see more of that, whether you want to call it Cold War, Cold Peace, whatever, but it's there, that ideological distinction is going to come sharper, I expect. Mm-hmm. Other appointments, Kurt Campbell is somebody to watch out. The US government has appointed him as the coordinator for Indo-Pacific. He's the one who drafted the idea of the pivot to Asia under Obama administration, which was clearly focused at counterbalancing China, especially in the maritime and naval domains. That's also bad news. Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, some people said that he has not got a Asia experience. He's more of a Middle East person. He was head of the CENTCOM, the US military headquartered in the Arab world, and that he really doesn't know much about Indo-Pacific. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, once you're a defense secretary, you're not operational command of one theater or the other. You're running the whole country, and the priorities, you will see that they will draft a new national security strategy, the new Biden administration soon, and you will see that it is reflected. Biden calling China the main competitor and saying we're going to take them on directly. I think it is showing that he has realized that the world has changed. There was once upon a time a Biden who was more of a moderate vis-a-vis China, who believed in the old liberal idea that somehow through cooptation and through cooperation, China can be changed and to be made more democratic and more amenable to American interests. That's not happening. The Chinese, like colleagues were saying on the panel, have become very, very hawkish and aggressive. So I think Biden, for all his instincts of being a liberal, is going to be a very, very realist on this matter.
What does this mean for India? What needs to be done going forward as far as India is concerned?
I think we are in close contact with the Biden administration at all levels, and our diaspora and our linkages there are very strong. Our congressional caucus in the US is bipartisan, and I think a lot of the unpredictability that Trump had created is kind of subsided now with the new mainstream government in Washington. So I think we can expect lots of issues to be ironed out. Already the indications are good in West Asia. It looks like Biden will slowly create a thaw with Iran, which which is in our interests that they cooperate. It's now quite obvious from Biden's first foreign policy speech that China will be right in the middle of the target practice for the Americans. So I think in that sense there's more cooperation. I think that we should look at trilateral cooperation. I know when we say multilateral, it often people think of 5 or 10 or 15 countries, but also US India plus one. We should be very, very proactive in seeding ideas in the new US administration. For example, there has been a military coup right next door in Myanmar, and the Americans came out openly condemning it. India also said it's a serious concern. We don't want sanctions. I don't think we will want to go that far as sanctions on the new military regime for very obvious geostrategic reasons. But nonetheless, this is an area where India and United States should be able to work together, and we should iron out differences and come up with a common strategy. See, Biden is coming from a point of weakness because of the domestic problems in the US. So despite his foreign policy speech and his willingness to challenge China across all issue areas, he will need a lot many more countries to tag along and to work closely with the US, because America, with the corona pandemic, with the economic depression, with the racial justice and the social polarization, all these problems at home cannot be a kind of like a colossus on the world stage. That era is over, and Trump simply brought it to a close. So I don't think that they can do this on their. So I think we should look at Myanmar, we should look at Nepal, whereas the Chinese are trying to somehow prevent a next election from happening and to prevent people's will from being exercised, because their puppets are still in power, even though the coalition has broken of the coalition of the leftists. America is equally concerned as India about what is going to happen to Nepal. Likewise, Sri Lanka, since the Rajapakshas have come back, they have been quieter compared to the earlier time. But quietly behind the scenes, China is again building up a lot of leverage there through infrastructure lending and investments. We should fortify all these countries, and India is now become much more open-minded than it was before to partner with the US and with other like-minded countries like Japan, to secure these countries. So I think trilateral cooperation is one area we should seriously approach, and of course broader multilateral cooperation. I think the 5G rollout, we should plan not only for our domestic market, but we should try and provide alternatives, combining not only with the US, because once Biden is in power, he's also mending fences with the Europeans. And the Europeans are a little bit caught in between. They wonder whether they should side with the US or should be neutral and should build themselves up as a parallel autonomy to the US and also work with the Chinese. So I think our relations with the EU will intersect with the new Biden administration's approach of creating a broad multilateral coalition. So 5G, the alternatives to Huawei and ZTZ are there. These are European largely, like Swedish companies like Nokia and Ericsson, or South Korean companies like Samsung and LG and so on. So I think we need to work with these alternative partners and create a coalition for technology self-reliance, which is able to break the stranglehold of the Chinese right now on this field. And that's how I think the tech war will go forward. It is not USA versus China.
Let me take the points that you're making to the other panelists now and get their thoughts in as well. So, Ambassador, as far as US-India ties are concerned, where does this leave us? What is it that India can do? What is it that the US is expecting out of us? Quick closing comments from all my panelists on that particular line of thought. Sreeram Chaulia, in 30 seconds, quick closing comments from you on the program.
Yeah, Frank, the new US National Security Council has come up with a very categorical comment that they will not allow China to intimidate its neighbors. We have to hold them to their words. What do they mean by that? From an Indian point of view, it's not just buying more high-tech weaponry from the US. They're always willing to sell us more. But it's not only surveillance and drones and such things, or more fighter jets or missiles. I think we need to involve the Americans more closer with regard to our own, the direct threat that we are facing at LAC. Let them come in, let them observe what's happening there. I think the level of trust between India and US is much higher today. Let them contribute in some fashion other than just hardware. Let us really make this a de facto alliance. Frankly, after Galwan, all our blinkers are off. We cannot, our strategic autonomy lies in a de facto alliance.
Sure.
We have now move away from the era of shying away from alliances, because that is the future to create a counterbalance in the world.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to my panelists for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us.